something.
G'day crew. Except for when I had COVID, I think this has been the longest gap that I've had between getting videos up. My apologies for that. Other commitments and bad weather have conspired against me. I'll do my best to maintain a regular schedule as we get into the Christmas period.
Much later than I wanted to be getting away, and it's a good deal rougher than I wanted it. So I haven't been out for a while, so going out anyway.
At the time I recorded that intro, I was expecting northerly winds of around 13 knots with gusts up to about 16 or 17 knots. Fortunately, but perhaps not all that surprisingly, the weather forecasters got it wrong again. Luckily for me, this time, they got it wrong on the high side and conditions were a good deal better than I had anticipated. However, that changed by the afternoon and they got worse than the forecast, but I'll talk more about that later. The first order of business was to find some live bait. There's quite a few places around Moreton Bay that you can get live bait, but if you want to fish at a certain spot and you need to fish that spot at a particular tide, then that limits your options a lot. I had a slightly later start than I would have liked, but that didn't make a great deal of difference because getting away at dark doesn't help me get live bait. I haven't had a great deal of success picking up live bait in the dark. I usually do really well once the sun comes up. But that wasn't the only issue here. I wanted to fish at Harry's and I wanted to fish a particular part of the tide, and I was running late. So my options for getting live bait boiled down to one area alone, and that is Harry's. I had to go up there and find some live bait at the fishing spot. So that was the first thing I did, or at least the first thing I tried to do. Normally it's not too difficult to find live bait at Harry's. I just check around all the structure that's there, and when there's no one anchored up on it, it's pretty easy to check it. Before long you'll find a school or two of live bait hanging around. However, on this occasion, I was very conscious of the need to get to the fishing spot that I wanted before I missed the best part of the tide. So I didn't have a lot of time to check every piece of structure that I know is there. So what I chose to do was to do a circuit around a few pieces of structure that were fairly close together and see if I could pick up some live bait on one of those.
Oh, squires.
I didn't find any big schools of bait. In fact, I didn't really find much bait at all. I did have a drop on one school I came across. Even though it didn't particularly look like a school of bait, I thought I might have got lucky, and it was all I'd seen, so I dropped the sabiki down and had a go. As you've seen, I was wrong. Judging by the one that I pulled up, it was just a school of small squire moving through the area. Of course, he got released. Even live bait has to be legal size. Well, that was all the time that I had to spend looking for live bait if I was going to get there and fish the tide. Fortunately, I always carry some backup bait, and this time I had a collection of Iluka pillies, cuttlefish and prawns from Mr. Bait at Hemet. I chose to use the pillies first, since everything was frozen and they'd be the quickest to thaw. To bait the pilly, I use a snell rig, usually with an octopus hook on the bottom and a circle hook at the top. I put the octopus hook through the side of the fish, just above the lateral line, and the circle hook through the nose, leaving enough slack line between the hooks so that the fish isn't pulled into a curve. If you have that line too tight, it curves the backbone of the fish and it spins in the water, and nothing's going to want to eat that.
Dolphins still hanging around. I think there's fish down there. As long as I don't take my bait. Dolphins are generally pretty intelligent. I haven't had them take a bait yet. It's not getting down to the bottom, it's sitting too high in the water. I'm just going to slip a quick sinker on up here, I think. That'll let it have a little bit of loose line and should still get it down in the water.
I've been using 30 metres of 20-pound wind-on leader over 25 grappler braid on my overheads for a while now. Lately, I've also stopped using a swivel on them, since the braid doesn't seem to need a swivel, and 30 metres of mono doesn't seem to have a problem without a swivel either. I usually have pre-made rigs with snelled hooks on them and almost a metre of 30-pound trolley leader on them. And that's what I'm doing here, is I'm attaching the short piece of leader from the hooks to the long leader on the main line with a double uni knot. Again, I'm putting the bottom hook through the body of the fish, but this time I'm putting the top hook through the bottom of the jaw and out through the bony part between the eyes and the nose. Putting the top hook through like that helps to keep the bait on, because that bony part of the nose is hard for the fish to get it off without taking a big bite at it. But it also keeps the mouth closed against the current. So if you don't pin the mouth closed, what can happen with a bit of current is the mouth is blown open, the gills are flared out, and the bait just doesn't look natural. And since I couldn't entice a bite from the fish that I had found in a couple of drifts over them, I decided to throw a lure out and have a troll around a couple of the other marks to see if I could spot some fish that may have been ready to have a bit of a snack.
Oh, bloody grinner. I wonder how long that's been on. Wasting my time trolling. Dragging him around. Like he's been there for a bit. A little bit of life left in him. Oh, let's get that treble out. Oh, he did half the job for me anyway. That was good of you.
I didn't have any joy from the trolling, apart from that grinner, and finding nothing of interest on the sounder at Harry's, I decided to head over to the foul ground and try my luck there. I marked some fish on the way in, and I set up a drift by eye based on the drift direction that was happening back at Harry's. As you can see, I missed the mark that I was aiming for on the first drift, but I did drift over some fish a little bit further south, near where some of my older marks were.
Just had a little sample of this, but no takers yet. I guess he didn't like it. That sample that I saw bit it straight off. Damn! What is down there? Oh, I wonder something. No head shake, right? That doesn't sound like a good thing. A little bit of line on you. Not happy again now. I don't know what it is. I don't get the shark this time. Oh, lost him. I didn't even get to see it. Hey, me Red Baron.
I had about 10 or 12 metres of my wind-on leader on the spool when the line broke, so the fish was only about 18 or 20 metres from the bait, not that far from seeing a bit of colour. Losing a big fish is bad enough, but I do find that it's not quite as annoying if I at least get to see it. I'm not sure why the line broke. There was no roughness around the break to indicate anything. Maybe that first big run that he did got him down near the bottom where it rubbed on something and weakened it and it broke later on. Who knows? But knowing the drag setting on that rod and the way he ran, it was certainly a big fish. When you hook something like that and you're still seeing fish on your sounder, you just have to keep drifting the area in the hope of catching one of its mates. In fact, it's not unheard of for a fish to be stupid enough to take a second bait with the first hook still in its mouth. That's never happened to me, but I have heard the stories and I always have hope after losing a big one.
Lifting. Oh. A bit of a bait there for just the bait. Oh, I got it. Whatever thing is, I got it. Getting a bit excited now. I want to see what you are. And if it is something I want, I haven't got the bloody net ready. Alright, I'm down. I can through. I got, oh, what is it? Oh, shit, it is something I want too. Bloody big one. Oh, he fought funny. Oh. Whoa, he's a beauty. Whoa, beauty. Are you a hard worker, old fella? Ah. Oh, you are a big fella. Oh, what have we hooked up on? That hook. Oh. Good idea. Maybe up there. Good Lord. Oh no, the other hook's still there. Jeez, I thought the hook had come off once I got him in the bait. Oh, he was hooked in the gill. That might be why he fought a bit funny. Or was he? Maybe that hook went in after. Okay. How big are you? Decent size. Woo, come on. Let's put you down there. You are, 68.5. Wow, hey you. That is lovely. Just sit still for a photo, would you? Oh yeah, 3.5 kilos. There it is, 68.5. What a beautiful fish. I love the colours, those blue colours along the side of the snappers. Getting his little hump on his head. Time to icky him and get him on ice. Whoa! I've got another one on. No, he's taking the bait. Yep, he's taking the bait. I'll leave it out there for a moment while I sort this. I'll icky him now.
George Mole had sent me a video clip of a guy cutting the tail of a snapper to Shinkei-Jime it, rather than feeding the wire down through the spinal column from the head as I had been doing in the past. It looked easier, so I thought I'd give it a try.
It's not going to go up there. Not going up there either. Okay, we'll bleed you anyway. I'll sort out the icky in a minute.
It didn't work for me. My wire was too thick to be fed in from the tail end, so I had to resort to my old method of going from the head end and pushing the wire down the spinal column until it got so tight it wouldn't go any further. My wife says one fish of that size at a time is enough. She is quite right, of course. Fish is always better eaten straight out of the ocean and into the pan before you need to freeze it. Apart from that, the sooner the fish is eaten, the sooner I can go back out and catch another one. But even knowing that, I still had to have another drift after this to see if I could upgrade to a bigger model. After all, I know there was at least one bigger model down there. On what turned out to be the last drift I had, the wind had changed, so the drift line was different to what it had been. I engaged the drift it feature on the Furuno MFD to calculate the point at which to start my drift so that I would be over the spot I wanted to fish 3 minutes after starting the drift. It's a great feature and it takes all the guesswork out of picking your drift point. The fact that you can tell it how long you want between starting your drift and getting over the spot to fish lets you set the time that it's going to take for your bait to get from the surface down to where the fish are. So in this case, 3 minutes was plenty of time for the bait to get from the surface down to where the fish were. That's all I needed. But if I'm offshore, I might want to take 5 or 10 minutes to get to my fishing spot from the drift point. And this does it all for me. Great feature. In the end though, I didn't use that drift. The line I was on took me over a school of fish that looked like it may have had a couple of predators hanging around it, so I just continued to drift so that the baits went through it. On this particular spot, I was in about 14-15 metres of water, I think, and when I'm drifting in that depth of water, I'm running about 40 or 50 metres of line out behind the bait, with the minimum amount of weight on the line that lets the bait get near the bottom. So I continued that drift long enough for the baits to well and truly pass through the school of fish I saw on the sounder, but I didn't get any takers. With the wind turning and strengthening and one nice snapper on ice, I decided to call it a day for fishing and go and try and get some screenshots for my next sounder video. This is the track I followed, out of Raby Bay, directly to Harry's, then I moved around a bit before heading over to the foul ground. Once I'd finished fishing, I headed into the Rouse Channel, up towards the bar and then down the Rainbow Channel. I had a particular spot in mind where there's a sheer drop of about 20 metres of rocky material which I wanted to use for the sounder video. Unfortunately, I'd stayed too long at the fishing grounds and the tide just wasn't good for getting where I wanted to go. I might be able to get there next time. Now this is the same map and the same track, but this time I'm showing the nearby green zones outlined in green and the Harry's and West Peel artificial reefs outlined in cyan. Stick around for the tackle talk coming up.
This is the rod that I hooked the first one on. It's got 25-pound grappler braid on it, topped off with 30 metres of 20-pound wind-on leader. That's Troll Pro 20-pound wind-on leader. I've joined the leader to the braid with an FG knot. I've showed you how to do them in previous videos. It's pretty easy and I've never had one fail on me. I don't run a swivel on this because I find that, particularly on this reel, the mono doesn't twist, and if the fish twists at all while it's coming in, the braid takes up the twist. What I've experimented with braid and swivels is you've got to twist the braid an awful lot before there's enough pressure there to even turn the swivel. So I don't think there's any point in using a swivel with braid apart from being able to maybe quickly attach a clip onto it. But for just normal fishing, I have stopped using swivels altogether with braid. For the hooks on this one, I've got a couple of Mr. Bates Troll Pro hooks. That's a 7-bar O and that's a 6-bar O. They're just the octopus hooks on this. A small number 2 and number 3, I think, ball sinker on top of it, just to help it go down when the current was running a little bit. If there's no current, no sinker at all. Now that hooked the fish, but unfortunately the line broke, and when the line broke, it sort of broke above the hooks a little bit. So I think it must have rubbed on something, weakened it, and broke. I generally do my rigs up with about, nearly a metre of leader on it, and that's usually a 30-pound leader, that last little metre, just to make it a little bit stronger. 2 hooks snelled, uni knot on the bottom one, knotless knot on the top one, about that far apart, and that works well for pilchards and live bait. And then I join that to the 20-pound mono leader with a double uni knot. That's a nice, simple, quick knot for joining the 2 leaders together, and works well mono to mono. Now this is a custom rod that I made. I've done a video on it. If you really want to know about it, you can look it all up. And I have a Shimano Speedmaster mounted on that. I love the lever drag overhead reels. They're really good. And when I'm fishing with that, I leave the drag off, the clicker on, and that seems to work pretty well. For a long time I thought the drag needed to be just slightly on, just to stop birds nesting. But George told me that all I needed was a clicker, and they're perfectly right. The clicker works just fine. Now this is the rod I actually landed the fish on. A Shimano Raider rod. It's not a terribly expensive rod. I think I picked this one up. It was on special for a little bit over $100. And a Shimano Bait Runner ST2500. When I throw it in, I just leave the bail arm open till there's about 40-50 metres of line out. It includes the 30 metres of wind-on leader I've got. And then I just flip it over into bait runner mode so the fish can take it and run off with it. This has 15-pound grappler braid on it and 30 metres of 20-pound Troll Pro wind-on leader on top of it. Again, no swivel. 30-pound Troll Pro trace, about just under a metre long, tied onto the wind-on leader with a double uni knot. And I've got a couple of circle hooks on this. Again, Troll Pro circle hooks from Mr. Bait. These are 4-bar O circle hooks, both of them. Uni knot on the bottom, knotless knot on the top one. Again, about that far apart. I generally prefer to use a octopus hook on the bottom hook if I'm using live bait. The circle hook's a little bit hard to get in, but it can be done. And I just put a little bit of bling on this in the form of a squid skirt. The snapper don't mind it. Whether it actually helps or not, I'm not 100% sure, but it certainly doesn't frighten them away, so it doesn't hurt. So yeah, that's the two ends of the spectrum. Got fairly cheap rig here. That's a reasonably cheap bait runner reel, reasonably cheap rod against a custom rod and a pretty good overhead reel. Both of them catch the same fish. Well, I have to admit, I do like using this one just a little bit better. It feels nicer. But other than that, you can catch the same thing on the cheap rig.
And that wraps up this video. Congratulations on getting this far, and thank you for taking the time to watch it. I hope you managed to pick up some tips that'll help you find more fish on the sounder and catch more fish. With luck, the next video will be another on the sounder series, and I'm still dealing with the 2D sounder and how to interpret what you're seeing on that. I hope you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. Until then, good fishing.